This September is going to mark 6 years since, well, officially the Mecha Sally arc ended. And one of the videos I have upcoming is the 4-part video that I did back then, where I opened all 17 issues of the main Sonic the Hedgehog comic book when it was under the Archie comic license. They will be all comprised into one video. But with that said, I also did a video, which you can kind of consider this being an update to that, about 5.5 years ago, 6 years now almost. Well, I basically gave an overall review of 230 to 247. And going off by memory, since I do have the issues, but they're in here. But going off by memory, it was a roller coaster. It really was. I mean, I still stick by the fact that they didn't have to go this route. Yes, people have the rights to say that, it was a unique take on the comics. It was a unique direction to go. But the payoff, in the end, a lot of people felt was weak. Some would agree that it did make sense, and that even before that, all evidence pointed to Sally being the traitor that Silver talked about. Heck, they even did a Sonic Universe arc where Silver went into the future of Mobius 30 years later and looked at Sally and thought at first there's no way that she could be the one. Right there, even though 30 years later, in some people's perspective, is not continuity connected to the main story, that right there, some will point out, should have been the clue, the biggest hint of all, that yeah, she's the traitor. But again, a lot of people, while reading 230 to 247, saw some good, saw some bad, but just felt that the ending was not a good payoff. Heck, Crystal Maiden 77, check her channel out by the way, Crystal Maiden 77 basically said that she feels Ian pulled it out of his rear end. Like, when the assumption, or when the plot basically was introduced that Silver was looking for a traitor in Sonic's timeline, a traitor that affected his timeline in a disastrous way, Crystal Maiden basically looks at the fact that Ian thought of Sally and the whole mecha robotization situation just out of nowhere. Like, she believes Ian Flynn had no idea of how he was going to resolve this in the first place. Not just the Mecha Sally situation, because he had an idea of how that was going to be resolved, but bringing Silver into the equation, she pretty much feels that that was just an excuse to wrap that story arc up, seeing as though 247, when one thinks about it, was the last issue of the original run of the comic before the soft retcon and reboot. And one may agree with her and others that think that way. But to me, when I finally looked through 230 to 247, like I said in that original video, and I said in the 4-part, soon to be a whole video that I did opening up all the issues, you could tell that there was something else going on. There was something else planned. Like, there were moments where it felt like Ian Flynn was going to go down a route where Sally was going to regain her free will. Like she wasn't, like she'd still be mechanized, roboticized, if you will, but she was going to regain her free will, see what she's become, see what Eggman has done to her, and maybe go after him, and maybe nearly sacrifice herself again to try to get back at him and save the world. Thus, her restoration would be just barely, and she would end up getting a new look or a new design out of it. The one she ended up getting originally. Excuse me, there. Ended up getting in the soft retcon and reboot. But despite all that, when one reads through these 17 issues of the main comic, again, like I said, there are some things that, if you're someone like, let's say, the media man over on DeviantArt, you know, there are some things that are good. There are some pros. You know, but then again, there are some negatives. You know, one of the biggest negatives that a lot of people took away from this book, and I think even Media Man may have agreed upon this, and Crystal Maiden 77 would agree upon this, is a lot of people felt that the gutting, if you will, as they put it, of Sally, Sally going from her original roboticized state to being weaponized, was crossing the line. Me, I look at the fact that I don't think, and I still stand by this point, I don't think Eggman, storyline-wise, gutted her. The way it looks like in one of those final scenes in one of the issues leading up to her debuted weaponized form, is it looks like he's just measuring her to put an outfit on her. Like he's going to wield on this armor to make her more powerful. But honestly, though, that was one of the biggest negative points that a lot of fans looked at. They didn't like the idea that, you know, you had this character who got herself roboticized to save the planet, suddenly, in the eyes of many fans, just torn apart and rebuilt into this weaponized being, when I believe at a time Archie Comics would not allow, not even Sega would allow something to go that far. The point is, and I know I say that, I'm saying that a lot here in this video, but the thing is, when you look at these 17 issues of the main comic, and you even read some of the connecting Sonic Universe arcs that are a part of it as well, it's like some of this, it's like deep down some of this would have made sense in the end. Some of this, in my opinion, would have made sense, probably would have had a real point to it, but in the end it just didn't work out the way it was meant to. You know, some people blame Ken Penders for his lawsuit and that being the reason that the storyline got derailed. And that's fine. You know, he does deserve a lot of the blame for that. You know, Ken Penders should have just let the story play out the way it was originally meant to. And I'm just adjusting the camera here for a second. I've been doing that a lot today. But like I said, a lot of people feel that Ken Penders should have just let the story play out the way it was intended to, and then maybe go and do his lawsuit or claim his characters. But that didn't happen. But there's another thing too. My mom, being the prayer warrior she is, the religious person that she is, and me being a born-again Christian, I believe this too, is this a saying that God has a reason for a lot of things happening? And as crazy as it sounds, even though this might be like a teeny tiny blimp on God's radar, even he realized probably that this is not what fans want. And maybe there was a reason. Maybe God allowed this whole situation with Kim Penders to occur so that Ian Flynn can realize, hey, don't do this. You shouldn't have done this. This doesn't make sense. I don't know. But when I look back at those 17 issues, you know, again, like I said, you could tell that Ian Flynn had something planned originally more so than what we got. I honestly don't think he was originally going to plan for 247 to end the way he did, or the way it did. Not just leading into the crossover, but the way originally he was planning it. I think there was more involved. I believe, honestly, Sally was going to regain her free will before 250 had things gone originally planned. I mean, there were signs there. There were signs all across that was the original plan, in a sense. Oh, that was part of the original idea. But we'll never know. And true, Ian may never tell us, so we'll never really know. And again, like I said, a lot of people have their opinions as to how this sudden resolution came to be, even before the crossover / soft retcon and reboot occurred. You know, Crystal Maiden 77, like I said, believes that Ian Flynn just decided to take the Silver the traitor subplot for Silver and just throw Sally being the traitor, and oh, this is why she's the traitor, because history lost the facts, and this is why, you know, this is why it adds up. And if there's one thing I will give Crystal Maiden 77 and many others that have taken their time reviewing this and looking at it credit for, is they'll write about one thing. And I don't know if I mentioned this in my original review or talk about it or discussion about it, but I have to go back and look. But they do have a point. I mean, history, especially nowadays, fictional or reality, history cannot lose any of its documents. You know, history, yeah, there are some things in reality-wise, real life, that historically there are some things and information, artifacts and stuff that are not discovered until thousands of years later, and people get surprised by how it's connected to the past and how we didn't know about it. But most of the time when it comes to documents as to like wars, traitors, historical moments occurring, those kind of things are always kept on file. And even in fiction, things like that are kept on file. And Crystal Maiden 77 and many others like her bring up a good point. How could something like Sally being roboticized and thus becoming an unwilling traitor, how can that be lost amongst any documented file? It's not. How can the history and the knowledge of robotization be lost? It can't be. So, you know, Crystal Maiden 77 does have a point. You know, it could be the fact that Ian knew that this was the last issue of the current run and that things were going to change afterwards. So he had to come up with a quick resolution to wrap up one of the main subplot arcs that he had for the character, for one of the game characters, and of course that being Silver. As well as wrap up possibly the Mecha Sally / World Tour 2 / Death Egg Mark II story arc, even if it's inconclusive. Long story short, when you get down to it, folks, you look at 230 to 247, there's going to be stuff you're going to like. I'm not going to deny that. But this, I mean, the artwork's great. And sometimes the acting or the acting, or not the acting, but basically the development, the dramatization, the way characters are written, in emotionally and dramatically and action-wise and comedic sometimes. It's all good. It's great. There are moments where that really shines. And like I said, the artwork is terrific at times. But, you know, in the end, even though those are some of the positives, there are negatives. And to me, the biggest negative is the story arc itself. It wasn't necessary. It really wasn't necessary. I mean, there are many other ways this could have been handled. You know, I mean the fact that originally they had other plans for getting sound. I mean, how do we know the Krazood was an original part of the de-robotization plan? We don't. We don't really know that. Point is, guys, there are some positives, like the ones I've mentioned, and there are some negatives. Probably the negatives outweigh more of the positives, like the story itself was not necessary. The sudden editorials that took place and they were obvious to see were not a good sign. That was a negative. The fact that a lot of fans, and when one thinks about it, a lot of fans out there, including one like Crystal Maiden 77 and maybe Mega Beat Man, and maybe if he looks back on it, Media Man, and a few others, you know, maybe they look at the fact that this whole, Sally's the traitor, but she's an unwilling traitor, tying into Silver's traitor subplot deal of finding out who it is. Maybe that was pulled out at the last minute, and that was just a way for Ian to wrap up certain story arcs in this original era or run during the time Sonic was under the Archie Comics roof. We don't know. But you know, that's a negative that basically outweighs a positive in this. And you know what's funny is, even before Archie Comics came to an end, even before the license, I should say, to Archie Comics came to an end, you know what got printed first in trade paperback after this is all said and done? Besides the crossover between Sonic and Mega Man? You know what got printed? The soft retcon. The soft reboot. They didn't touch the Mecha Sally arc. One, because it's too long. It's 17 issues. And two, I think in a sense, Ian Flynn may have had a say in being like, look, you know, let's just put that on the shelves. Let's not worry about that anymore. That's non-coincidental or whatever. So, yeah, it is a surprise that's the one arc, as far as I know, depending on what kind of trade paperbacks they had at the time, that never got a release. Even in various volumes, didn't get a release. That should be telling you something. And whether or not IDW takes the same approach that they did with the Ninja Turtles and reprint in graphic novel volume form all the issues of the Archie Comics run for Ninja Turtle Adventures, unless IDW does something similar with Sonic, I don't think we'll ever see the Mecha Sally arc played out the way it did. I don't think, re-released. I don't think we'll ever see it again. The only way people are going to see it is either through places like YouTube here, Comixology, downloading a torrent, or having the issues themselves like I do. But you know what? It's kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of amazing that that's the one arc that never got a graphic novel release before Archie Comics ended the partnership. It's amazing, right? When you think about it. Because I think, in a sense, honestly, my belief is Ian Flynn or the higher-ups are like, look, we heard the response, and majority of the response to this Mecha Sally arc basically was thumbs down. And the thumbs down, the negative, outweighed the thumbs up and the positives. And maybe Ian Flynn was in agreement. Like, maybe he realized what he wanted to do didn't turn out the way he wanted, it was like, now we don't have to reprint this. Let's forget it. Because obviously he knew, obviously he saw and heard the backlash along with Archie Comics and Sega. Who knows? I can't be totally sure about that, but isn't it kind of ironic that worlds collide, and the first 6, 7 issues of the Soft Retcon reboot get a graphic novel, and even the issues that followed a little bit get a graphic novel release, but this doesn't? It's kind of intriguing when you think about it, guys. Kind of interesting. But that's really all I'm going to say. That's all I really want to say on this updated version of the 230 to 247 video that I did for the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book issues 230 to 247. Or 230 to 247, I should say. Let me know what you all think down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear from you guys. And I will talk to y'all later. But yeah, when you think about it, it's kind of amazing that it's the only story arc that never got before the partnership ended. Multiple volumes centered around, multiple graphic novel volume collections released centered around it. Kind of amazing, right? Let me know what y'all think down below. Talk to y'all later.